everyone, here's a first look at the art journal page we're making using the supplies from the Mixed Media Inspired subscription. I'm working in my large Dylusions art journal on a gessoed page, and I'm going to start by putting color down with this Pearlescent watercolor set. Now, if you're familiar with watercolors, traditionally they use watercolor paper, but I'm working in my Dylusions journal, and so on the gesso, this watercolor is going to bead up a little bit, which I think is a really cool effect. So I'm just going to cover the entire background with a bunch of these colors on my wet paintbrush and let them dry. And now I'm going to go in with a second layer of the same colors, kind of putting them in the same area. And you can see how much the color intensity is building up with this second layer. Now, if it doesn't perfectly match with the first layer, that is okay, but I am kind of trying to stay so the blue is where the blue is. And then I'm going to splatter some more of this watercolor with my wet paintbrush so I have splatters over my entire background and let it dry. I'm going to put some paint through a dilution stencil and with a mini blending tool, and I'm just putting this all over the background. Now, when I lift the stencil away, it's actually not very visible, so off camera, I am going to go back in with a paint pen to kind of pump up that so it's a little bit more visible. I've grabbed my odds and ends journal where I put extra paint when I'm done working on my projects, and I'm laying out a stencil and spraying over it with Dina Wakley Media gloss spray. So the idea is that I'm going to lift this stencil up and flip it onto my page to create a print. So after I've done this, I'm just taking an extra piece of paper and rubbing over the top of it to really make sure that stencil has good contact with my page. The reason I sprayed in my odds and ends journal is because I didn't want to waste that gloss spray, so I'm building a background for a future page. Now that my stencil has been printed onto my page, I'm also taking the gloss spray and using the stem of the spray to create lines hanging down from the stencil. So the idea here is that I'm creating a dream catcher. If you're not familiar with dream catchers, there's lots of images of them available online. But traditionally, dream catchers do have objects hanging down from strings, hanging down from the main dream catcher circle. So I'm just drawing in the lines with the gloss spray, then twisting the cap back on. While the gloss spray is drying, I'm going to use the Stay Wild stamp set and ink all of these feathers and stamp them down onto white cardstock. I'm inking them up with Distress Archival ink. Archival ink is a permanent ink. It's waterproof, so it's a perfect thing to be using when I'm stamping if I intend to color them with watercolors, which I do. So I'm using several colors of the archival ink, and I'm just stamping them down. So in the end, I will have a pink, a blue, a green, and a yellow feathers that I will be able to colorize with lots of different colors of the watercolor. So I'm just going to go in, and there's no rhyme or reason to how many I'm coloring. It's just what I think looks good. So I'm wanting to have all of the colors represented in the background on the leaves. So yellows, oranges, greens, blues, purples, and brown. And then when these are all colored, I'm going to set them aside to dry and work on my actual dream catcher. So I'm using a Pen Touch paint pen from Sakura to color in a bunch of white dots along the lines in the dream catcher to kind of represent beads or just some design elements on the dream catcher. So I'm just going through and wherever I think it looks good, adding some dots. I've also used the scissors to cut out all of these feathers, and now I'm going to begin gluing them down with my Dylusions glue stick. Now the reason why I'm using a glue stick on this is because watercolors are water-based, and that makes them reactive when I put any kind of wet medium on top of them, like a regular wet adhesive. So by using this glue stick, I'm protecting the watercolor, gluing everything down, and now I'm going to write my quote. So I'm using this white paint pen to do that, but if you're not comfortable with using your own handwriting, you could also stamp this, stencil it, cut it out of paper, any way that you want to create this quote. I really enjoyed doing handwritten elements in my journal. I think that's part of the handmade nature of it, so I enjoy doing that. So that is what I'm doing for this journal page today. And I'm writing out the words dream in color. Now, I'm starting out by just doing the outline, and then I will go back in with this paint pen and color them in so you can really see all the words. And this is the way that I always do my titles. I like to just kind of block everything out and then go back in and color them in, fill them in, and make them really pop. So you can see, here's my quote in full. It's all colored in. It's bright white. You can really see it. And I'm just finishing it up here. And then I'm going to go in with a Posca paint pen. This is yellow glitter. And I'm adding some drop shadow on the right side of all of my letters so that it just has a little more interest and also pops from the background, adds some sparkle. And with that, my page is complete. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you were inspired and got ideas to use in your own art projects. I'd love to see what you're making, so take a picture of your projects and post it using hashtag ArtJournalJunction. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up and also hit that subscribe button to let YouTube know you want to see more mixed media and art journaling videos from us in the future.